Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And FYI, I actually recorded this on Saturday, so if anything from Saturday afternoon to Sunday when you watch this comes up in terms of data breach, I will definitely cover it in next week's video. But I'd like to thank the following people that sent me messages, linked to me, tagged me, whatever it was to get me a lot of these breaches, and that is David Walker, Jason Dance, Chris Fallon, and Jacqueline Wolf. Guys, I really appreciate it, and if you have a tip for me, please feel free to send it my way, and I will give you a shout out, in this video and podcast, and if I miss you, I'll do it the week after. But thank you, guys, and with that, let's start with a few different and very specific dating apps. Let's put it that way. So if you use any of these dating apps, and this would be Threesomes, Cougary, Gay Daddy Bear, XPal, BBW Dating, Casual X, Sugar D, Herpes Dating, and G Hunt, and I have a couple guesses on what that one is, you might have a bit of a problem because security researchers that were scanning the internet on May 24th basically stumbled across a collection of publicly accessible Amazon Web Services buckets, in this case databases. Each contained a ton of data from those dating apps I just mentioned, and this information is very sensitive because it includes things like sexually explicit photos and audio recordings. The researchers also found screenshots of private chats from other platforms and receipts for payments, basically sent between users within the app, apparently for the relationships that they were in. And although this data exposed included limited personal identifiable information like actual names, birthdays, and email addresses, the researchers are also warning that a motivated attacker could obviously take these very explicit photos and all of that and start blackmailing people or use it for other kinds of malfeasance. So heads up to you if you use any of those dating apps. Hopefully they've locked them down. Moving on, let's talk about an outfit called Delivery Hero. This is an online food delivery service, and they confirmed a data breach of one of their brands called Foodora. And basically, this breached information is from 14 countries, including the personal details of 727,000 accounts. We're talking names, addresses, phone numbers, and hash passwords, as well as 6-point latitude and longitude coordinates, probably for your home as you are ordering this. So that is obviously a very serious issue. They're also saying no financial data was leaked, and this data was posted on May 19th to a well-known hacking forum that leaks stolen data where you can go and purchase it. So heads up to you if you use Foodora from Delivery Hero. Moving on, let's talk about Claire's. This is basically stores across America, malls and all of that. They sell jewelry and accessories and all of that. They just closed 3,000 physical retail locations, obviously due to this whole pandemic. They did that on March 20th, but an analysis from the Sensec threat research team shows that a mage card group saw this opportunity to basically attack them and get a lot more payment card data because they were assuming that obviously if Claire's is closing their brick and mortar stores, they're going to move those sales online, which they did. And by virtue of that, a mage card skimmer was used to attack online customers of Claire's for about a month and a half. So hopefully they have that resolved. But if you have shopped at Claire's, let's say since late March, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about A1 Telecom. This is out of Austria. This happens to be their largest internet service provider. This company admitted to suffering a malware infection in November of 2019. Now, A1 said its security team detected the malware a month later, but that removing the infection was rather problematic and more so than they had initially anticipated. Now, from December of 2019 to May of this year, A1 said its security team has been battling the malware operators in its attempt to move all of the backdoor components and basically eject them from the network and then lock it down. A1 has not disclosed the nature of the malware. In other words, we don't know what malware variant they have, and they didn't say that if the intruders were financially focused, like a cybercrime gang, or if it was a state-sponsored hacking group or something like that. So heads up if you're in Austria and use A1 Telecom, including my cousin that lives there. Moving on, let's talk about, we're heading over to India because we're going to be talking about Indian blood donors. This is a nonprofit organization that maintains a database of blood donors and matches recipients to a suitable donor. The personal data of more than 12,000 Indian blood donors were basically showed up for sale on the dark web. The information included names, phone numbers, email addresses, as well as blood types, PIN codes, and passwords, all in plain text. So hopefully they'll get that straightened out, but that information is already gone, or rather already public. Moving on, let's talk about Draftkings. This is an online gambling outfit. Draftkings disclosed in an SEC filing that SB Tech, who they merged with in April, was hit by a ransomware attack at the end of March of 2020. And as I mentioned, it's a ransomware hit. The filing, though, does not state what ransomware type or group actually conducted this attack, so it's probably an ongoing investigation. Hopefully they have that locked down, but heads up all you DraftKings and SB Tech users. Moving on, let's talk about Google Chrome browser extensions. A ton of them. Now, the browser extensions that we're talking about have been downloaded almost 33 million times from Google's Chrome web store. And basically, this was actually downloading highly sensitive user information. And this is according to researchers at Awake Security. Now, the extension these extensions, which Google removed after being privately notified of them, actively siphon data such as screenshots, contents and device clipboards, browser cookies used to log into websites, and keystrokes such as passwords, and on and on and on. Now, many of these extensions were modular, meaning once they were installed, they updated themselves with executable files, which in many cases were specific to the operating system that they ran on. Now, company researchers found that all 111 of the extensions that they identified as malicious connected to internet domains registered through Israel-based Telecom. The researchers eventually found more than 15,000 registered through Telecom hosting malicious domains or showing suspicious behavior. The malicious domains used a variety of evasion techniques to avoid being labeled as malicious by security products. So heads up to you if you use Google Chrome. It's one of the reasons why I like to use Brave, and I almost never ever use extensions, except for a few of the big ones. I'm not an extensions guy. Moving on, let's head on over to Hungary and talk about DigiZrt, also known as Digi. Now, this is a Hungarian provider of various electronic communication services and television to more than 800,000 households in that company. In September 2019, an ethical hacker reported a cybersecurity vulnerability to Digi. The vulnerability concerned their website running basically open source content as a management platform, and it had two different databases that were exposed. Now, the first was a test database of subscribers, which was created for troubleshooting purposes years prior to this discovery, and this database also contained identification data on system administrators, which resulted in additional security risks. The second database contained the name and email addresses of subscribers to Digi's email newsletter, and this database contained identification data, email addresses, telephone numbers, and bank account information. The personal data in the database was not encrypted, so that's great. The authority concluded that the data could have been used for identity theft, and Digi now has the honor of having the largest GDP fine to date, which is now 290,000 euros worth of a fine, or 235,000 roughly in US dollars. Moving on, let's talk about Minted Inc. Now, this is an online stationery and craft company. They got hit with the CCPA. This is the California Consumer Privacy Protection Act. They got hit with a class action lawsuit in the CCPA stemming from a massive data breach that they disclosed in late May. Now, the proposed class action, filed obviously in California, claims that Minted failed to implement reasonable security measures to properly encrypt certain personal information. As a result, the attackers allegedly accessed the company's database that contained the customer's names, login credentials, including unredacted and unencrypted account information. Some 73.2 million records were allegedly stolen that included passwords, names, and other information. So we will see where this goes, but once again, this underscores why if you spend a little bit more money on security to lock this stuff down, you're going to lose a heck of a lot less than getting a lawsuit. So here we are. Moving on, let's talk about Avon, the cosmetics giant. This company's filed documents with the SEC in the United States, disclosing an incident on June 9th, a day after the company first discovered issues with some of its IT infrastructure. Now, the company said the incident, and I quote, interrupted some systems and partially affected operations. Now, details about the nature of this attack are still a mystery, but a second document filed with the SEC on June 12th, this past, I believe, last Thursday or so, or actually it'd be a week ago Thursday, Avon promised to restore some of its affected systems in its impacted markets during this week. So I don't have much more on that, but as that unfolds, I will definitely let you know because Avon is huge. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Wiggle. This is an online sports retailer. Concerns were raised after customers started receiving emails confirming orders for items from Wiggle that they had not actually placed. Now, the suspicious orders were set to be delivered to addresses that the confused customers did not recognize, and the idea that Wiggle basically had been hit by a possible cyber attack was basically first put out there, a few weeks ago, but basically shot down on June 12th by Wiggle. One customer reached out to cycling news site road.cc after failing to basically get a response from Wiggle on a 30-pound order that was charged to his account that he said he did not make. Another user that was talking about this on Twitter said that he had actually talked to Wiggle and claims that Wiggle had been aware of a cybersecurity breach for over 10 days, but has still not gone public with the news. So we're going to see what happens there. But if you use Wiggle, heads up to you, I would probably change your password and keep a real good eye on your account and credit card statements. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Penn Township in Pennsylvania here in the United States. If you're part of a township, odds are you're one of many small cities within that township, and this is what we are talking about here, because in late May, somebody in Belgium, one of the towns in the Penn Township, got access to a credit card to steal more than $200. And this is according to the township treasurer, Tina Kelly. The latest attack, combined with Duncannon, which is another Penn Township town, becoming victim of a ransomware attack in April, has now convinced the supervisors of Penn Township that they need to enhance their security. I don't have much more than that, but if you live in Penn Township, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. This is Ohio government's department that is overseeing this specific type of unemployment due to the coronavirus. Now, Cleveland attorney Mark Dan filed a civil lawsuit in Cuyahoga County against Deloitte Consulting, which is under contract with the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services to develop this system and administer the pandemic employment program. And so obviously the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family reported a recent incident that allowed pandemic unemployment assistance applicants to view other applicants' names, social security numbers, and street addresses. Ohio is one of a zillion states they've already talked about, including my own Illinois and Kentucky and on and on. Arkansas was another one, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. And so basically, they're saying that only 24 people were impacted by this issue and it was fixed within an hour, but the lawsuit alleges that tens of thousands of applicants could be part of this class action, since it has been reported that as many as 161,000 Ohioans applied for this assistance. So we'll see where this goes. Once again, just securing your stuff, definitely cheaper and less reputation damaging than a lawsuit, especially class action. Moving on, let's talk about Kano Health out of Florida. They're a population health management vendor, and they recently began notifying patients that their data was potentially compromised after attackers breached 3 employee email accounts over the course of 2 years. On April 13th, officials said that they first discovered an attacker had accessed email accounts and then forwarded some messages from those accounts to an outside party. Kano Health immediately secured those accounts, according to them, and then launched an investigation and all of that. So we're talking about names, dates of birth, contact details, health data, insurance information, social security numbers, government identification numbers, and or financial account numbers may have been affected. So if you use Kano Health out of Florida for any reason, heads up. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Order of Engineers of Quebec, the province in Canada, and bear with me on this one because the only article I could find was in French, and thanks to Google Translate, I can bring you this information, which I believe is accurate. The personal information of 1,756 members and candidates for the engineering profession outfit, I guess, may have been affected by a breach of computer security. This incident occurred due to a flaw in the transactional software of an external supplier of the Order of Engineers, and basically it's sounding like this is a credit card hit. So if you've used your credit card with the Order of Engineers of Quebec, and I am not even going to attempt to pronounce that in French, please make sure you're checking in with them. Moving on, let's talk about the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. This is an update on a data breach they had in 2014. A 29-year-old hacker has now been indicted and arrested for allegedly hacking the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The guy is Justin Sean Johnson, also known as TDS or DS in the dark web, was arrested Tuesday in Detroit, Michigan. He was indicted by a federal grand jury in Pittsburgh on charges of conspiracy, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft, basically associated with this medical center hack. And so Johnson allegedly stole 65,000 UPMC employees' personal information during this data breach. Johnson's also have alleged to have sold this personally identifiable information and W-2 information on the dark web, resulting in the filing of thousands of false IRS tax returns. These thefts then resulted in approximately $1.7 million in false tax return refunds, and this is according to prosecutors. The 2014 breach did not implicate patient data, fortunately, just employee information. And basically there are 43 counts in the indictment that was returned on May 20th and was unsealed this past Thursday. The government is trying to detain Johnson until a trial, obviously considering him a flight risk. So, crime, while it may pay initially, doesn't pay in the long run. Remember that, kids. Moving on, let's talk about IT services. Cognizant, and I've mentioned them, I want to say like a month ago or so, and basically they are now confirming that they basically had a hit, and it looks like it's the Maze ransomware group and all of that, and so they are now owning up to what we have been reporting on for some time here. And finally, we've got two more stories for you that we're going on, because this has been just a crazy week, and I think both of these are going to be really interesting, and we're going to start with Blue Kai. Now, this is an outfit that is now owned by Oracle. Oracle bought them for, I think it was $400 million. And basically, if you don't know who they are, they have amassed one of the largest banks of web trafficking data outside of the federal government. So if you've ever wondered why, your ads have been so accurate, it's because companies like this have been deeply tracking you wherever you go online. And you know where I'm going with this, because here we are. Now, Blue Kai uses website cookies and other tracking tech to basically follow you around the world, wherever you go on the web. And by knowing what websites you visit and which emails you open, marketers can then use this just vast amount of tracking information to infer a lot about you, such as your income level, education, political views, interests, and on and on. And they do this in order to target you with ads that should match your apparent taste. So for example, if you are doing nothing but potentially, let's say, looking at Ferraris online all day, and you seem to be shopping at very high-end stores, they're going to match you to say, this person could probably afford a Ferrari, and now Ferrari is going to get the chance to advertise you in the same way that if you're looking at Hondas all day and blah, blah, blah. So you get where I'm going with this. They are looking at all of that, not to mention political views. And so obviously, if you're clicking on any of these things, these advertisers are then making money. This is how Blue Kai is generating money for Oracle. Now, here's the thing. For a time, that web tracking data was basically insecure and spilling out into the open internet because a server was left unsecured without a password, which exposed billions of records for anyone to find. Meaning my records and habits that Blue Kai has, just like yours, and if you are listening to this or watching this, odds are they've got information on you, was exposed. We have pretty much all been hit because they are one of the largest one of these providers on the planet. That is a huge, huge problem, and hopefully they've got that locked up. But if you've ever wondered why ads are just eerily accurate for you, Blue Kai is one of those reasons. And finally, I want to talk about Vault 7, because we have a very interesting update for this. Now, if you recall, the CIA had a whole bunch of hacking tools that were dumped onto WikiLeaks in 2016, which was like a bomb going off in the intelligence community and gave us basically a really good understanding of these tools and just how easily the CIA could break into some kinds of infrastructure, but also surveil us. One of the most notable examples of the Vault 7 tools was a tool that would essentially bypass Cisco firewalls. Obviously, Cisco rushed to fix and patch that issue, but they could just walk right into them at that time. It was just a massive issue. We now have more information, though, on how that happened, thanks to an internal report that was prepared for then Director Mike Mike Pompeo, as well as his deputy, Gina Haspel, who is now the director of the CIA. Now, this was apparently the result of workplace culture in which the agency's, basically their elite team, and I quote, prioritized building cyber weapons at the expense of securing their own systems. Security procedures apparently were woefully lax within the special unit that designed and built these tools. Now, what's most terrifying about this, and again, according to this report, is that without WikiLeaks, without this disclosure and having them dump this everywhere, the CIA might have never known that these tools had been stolen in the first place, again, according to the report. And to quote it, had the data been stolen for the benefit of a state adversary and not published, we might still be unaware of this loss. That is terrifying, because if they've been playing fast and loose, it is very possible that state actors did have copies of this beforehand and possibly did have that afterwards, and they are not going to disclose that. And if the CIA has no idea that somebody else has their tools or their playbook in this manner, that's a huge problem. But it doesn't just start and stop with the CIA when we are talking about internal lax security. This is a problem that I see personally with tech outfits constantly. A chunk of my own client base are actually managed service providers, or MSPs. These are third-party IT companies that work with a lot of different outfits out there, and they come to me basically to learn about more advanced cybersecurity frameworks, techniques, hardware, software, training, all these kinds of things that they don't really have the training for, and they come to us for that. And I see these things regularly when we are reviewing and understanding them as a services provider, their internal practices that are oftentimes very lax or don't really have any good controls or compensating controls in place. And so for me, there's absolutely no wonder why these MSPs are continuously getting hit, and this information is being dumped. We've had a rash over the last couple of years of these managed service providers getting hit and cryptoed or ransomed on that, and that's a very serious issue. And that's not just small providers, that's the massive ones as well. And so when you're so focused on delivering that you don't take the time to enhance your own internal defenses, it's a very serious issue. And that doesn't just go for the CIA or MSPs, that goes for every organization, especially on the small to mid-sized ones, where the entire focus of this is delivering to the customer, whatever that is, whatever that product is, services, goods, whatever, that you don't take the time to actually build solid defenses into your infrastructure. And I think that's a very serious problem. And Vault 7 proves that at a very massive, very serious, and very dangerous level. So I will leave it with that. You were affected this week. I'm not even going to ask the question because of Blue Kai and some of these others. And so let's all just make sure that we are maintaining good vigilance in our lives. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.